Hello, and welcome to the Assessing Learners module. As you can see, I have a few different files here. The Special Education Law, 90 Tips in 120 Minutes, which we've gone over in the assessment course. And I also have another document here called High Leverage Practices, which was put out by the CEDAR, which is a collaborative of educators and university people. I will have the link to this support video that you're listening to right now here once it's all finished. Here's a link to the PowerPoint for this module and a link to a YouTube video which I'm asking you to watch. We'll be going over the overview of the TPE, going from a concern to an IEP, the high leverage practices, class analysis, progress monitoring, timelines and tips, and also what's next. You can see that the assignments, the 3 assignments with this module are right here. You will be creating a screening tool, a class analysis tool, and a progress monitoring tool. So let's jump into the PowerPoint. So if you could, just take a moment and click on the link to the assessment and education video. It is not very long, so if you can watch that. He goes over 14 examples with some really funky music in the background. Anyway, please take a look at that just to kind of reorient yourself with what we mean by assessments. Okay, so hopefully you are back. As you remember, the TPEs are the teacher performance expectations, and there's 6 of them that you need to demonstrate to the state of California by the time that you finish your program in order to earn your teaching credential. So the one that I'm going to be really focusing on is assessing learners. So there's the section, and I'll let you go through and read these, but there's the section of just assessing learners for special education eligibility, to monitor progress, and also to make decisions around eligibility, placement, and services that they might need. You need to know how to do this, both for statewide assessments, formative, formal and informal, and whatever else that the student might need. The other thing that you need to do is make sure that you use assessment data to identify interventions and support techniques, that you develop any sort of augmentative or alternative systems, that you are implementing instruction on communication and social skills, you're creating and facilitating opportunities for interactions, and you're developing communication methods to demonstrate the student's academic knowledge. So the communication methods with the family and with the student and possibly other educators at the school. And then also you're addressing the unique learning needs of the student. The other piece to the TPE is that you're demonstrating your knowledge of special education law around administration and documentation of assessments and the IEP process. So you need to demonstrate that you understand the requirements for the appropriate assessments, especially when you're looking at students with diverse cultural, ethnic, gender, or linguistic differences. And this is really speaking to the disproportionate number of culturally and linguistically diverse students in special ed, and how we have to make sure not to do that. And remember, some of the ways that we don't do that is by making sure that we have appropriate assessments and we have assessed with fidelity. You also need to show that you understand the difference between a language disorder, a disability, and just language differences. Another part of the TPE is knowing how to appropriately administer the assessments. And this goes for the academic and behavioral assessments, but also the communication assessments, so like AAC. All right, so that's basically it. So just some reminders about, you have a concern about a child, and then actually them getting an IEP and receiving special education services. So remember that there's the child fine law in IDEA. That means that if you are concerned in any way about a child, then you need to report it to the school so that there can be some sort of investigation into what's going on for that child. You have these student support team meetings to check on things like how the student is being supported and possibly whether the MTSS is being implemented. So this could include looking at a universal screening, looking at progress monitoring probes, and formative and summative assessments. And then, or in addition to this, sometimes students are referred for special education. And there's the multiple types of assessments that have to go into that. And then if the student does qualify, then you need to make sure to write goals and make a progress monitoring plan. And then also remembering that every 3 years minimum, the student will need to be fully reassessed. All right, this is one of the documents that I wanted you to take a look at. So now I'd like you to pause and download this, this book that they have put together. And I would just want you to read page 18 to 19 and 41 to 49. And I will show this to you right now so you can see it's a pretty extensive book. And I'm just having you read the sections on assessment. And this will give you, let me actually make this a bit bigger. So just to kind of show you what's in here, let's see, whoops. To do instruction, whoops, did I pass it? I did. Okay, so that's right here. All right, so you can see that these are just the high leverage practices. So what this group did is they went through and looked at all the research and said, okay, what is the most important thing for teachers to know about these different topics? So this one is the assessment one, so just please go through and read these. And then the other area was page 41 to 49. So just those 2 pages, and then 41 to 49 to 32. And here we go. So it's a pretty easy read, but once again, they go over, they explain, and they give you examples of how to do this within your class. And so it tells you about all the most recent research and supports that you can give. And what that exactly means. So please read that. And this will also hopefully help you with your activity around the screening. Okay, so just a reminder of what courses you have had around assessment. So in the assessment course, we talked about special education eligibility, decision making regarding eligibility, and the placement in least restrictive environments, and how and when to use different assessments. In your methodology courses, your assessment course, and also the behavior and collaboration course, which you take in the fall of your 2nd year, we talk about goal writing and progress monitoring. And then just also remembering that you will use your data to do all of these areas which the TPEs require, and you'll be doing this using the UDL lesson planning. It could be around assistive technology, so the lesson delivery, and the progress monitoring. So all of these areas of requirements that we have actually are the ways that you demonstrate that you're able to meet these TPEs. And then, of course, just the knowledge of all of these pieces. I went through the TPEs before, so you can pause, you can take a look, but that this is what we were actually assessing your success on. Okay, let's go into the application. So, as mentioned before, you have 3 assignments that you're going to be doing for this module. So the first one is universal screening. So what you're going to do is you're going to put together some assessments that you can give to your class, and this will be different depending on what age you are teaching, what grade level, what ability levels you're teaching, and really what it is that you're trying to learn about your students. So if you remember, we had formal and informal assessments for academics last spring. And so you can use something like the Brigance if that seems to fit the level of your students. So remember how they had the placement test. So you can even have your students, all of your students, do the placement test for possibly reading, writing, and math from the Brigance. And you're more than welcome to come on campus and check the Brigance out to do that. Or remember, you could use the Easy CBM and just get a baseline for each one of your students and kind of find out where they are. If you're in elementary school, your school might have the like the DRRA or some other type of reading program that they want you to assess your learners with. So I can't tell you exactly what the academic piece will look like. That'll depend on your school, but you do want to get a baseline, a universal screening to find out what levels they are. The other thing I would recommend you put in your universal screening kit is organizational skills. So this could be maybe just a short questionnaire about, do you use a planner, or if you're teaching in high school, then maybe it's, do you use an online calendar? It could be, do you have a backpack? So any of these types of things to find out what the organizational skills are for your learners and what they have done in the past, so that you know what you need to maybe work with them on over the course of the year. And like I said, it can just be a few questions, but as long as you're trying to learn more about your students and where their needs and their strengths might be. An interest inventory. So remember, we did this with the CRSTP, where we actually asked students about their interest. It's also pretty easy, so I can just do interest inventory grade 3. I'm just going to put in there. You can see we've got a bunch of interest inventories that you can go through. And just if you want to choose one of those that seems to fit your grade level and ability level and interest level, then that's great. Just put that one in there. And then also finding out what helps students. So this could be an interview that you do with students depending on their age level, but just ask them, what have teachers done in the past that have helped you? Maybe asking them about strategies, like, do you like to work in small groups or with pairs, or do you like to work alone? It can be any sort of question, but I think once you read the high leverage practices, you'll know which ones you might want to ask about and include. And so this can be a short questionnaire. These last 3 can all go together. It's up to you, but I want you to do something so that in that first week, you're able to assess your learners and figure out where they all are. And then that will help you with your class analysis tool. So I just want to remind you, let me see, do I have it up here, about the lesson plan that you'll be using. And the first section of it is actually the class analysis. So you'll be listing out all of your learners, their levels and assets, their interests and strengths, and then also any needs that they have. You're going to be looking at your classroom for support people and who are in there to help support you for the different classes. You're going to do an assessment on your technology that you have access to. And then also, depending on which class it is, then you might have supplemental materials and other resources. And this will, let me just show you an example of, let me see, I think I have one in here, of what a lesson plan looks like. So this is what you'll be filling out. So this one here, we've got this is for 7th grade. We've got the Lexile rating and the grade equivalent. We have the interest inventory and the strengths. And then here is, you can see the actual IEP goals and then also other notes about things that might be helpful for you to know about the student. For example, the student number 2 was homeless last year, and so that might help you as you're planning out your lesson. So me go back here. So that is, you're going to actually be creating a class analysis tool. So what I've done is I actually created one here that you can take a look at. And let me just pull this up. So you can see I've got the learner's name, the day that the IEP is due. I've asked, or I will fill in the strengths, interests, and preferences, the reading level, math level, behavior level, areas of support. So this is with life experiences. So this could be maybe their LPAC score, or it could be maybe it's a GATE student, or maybe they have a therapist or a probation officer. It could be anything. So this also, same thing, you would actually list out the support people. If they use some sort of assistive technology. So remember, assistive technology is not just computers or devices. It's also any sort of people that might help them throughout the day, and it could be low tech or high tech. So it could be as small as like a highlighter or post-it notes or a planner. And then it could also be a AAC device. So you would just want to make sure to list that, and then any sort of supplemental materials that you have available in your class. So this could be SDI or PSYOP strategies. It could be technology. It could be additional textbooks, and then other resources. Now, these might be the same for everybody, so this one doesn't have to necessarily be there, but what ends up happening is if you fill this, once you fill this out for each one of your learners, then you can actually go to the responses, and it will create a spreadsheet for you. And so you can actually go in, and this will create that same spreadsheet that you saw when you were looking here. So then your spreadsheet is all done, because it'll put it all in there, and you can continue to add. And then you can even use, with this spreadsheet, you can add another column and say maybe, let me see, progress or IEP meetings, additional IEP meetings, or something like that. And then you have all of the different supports and everything for your class all in one section or one area that you can then refer to. And if your school already has some sort of system that they're using, then you don't have to use Google Forms. You can use whatever works for you and for your school. The next thing, that the third assignment that we're going to be doing, so that's the class assignment, and like I said, I've got an example there that you can take a look at. And here's the example of the class analysis and what needs to go in your lesson plan. And then we have the progress monitoring form. So remember, with assessment, it's really important that you continually monitor the progress of your student. So once again, I created a form here, and we can click on this. And it just has, you'll put in the students' names or initials or student number to keep their privacy. And then the date, so whatever today's date is, their attendance for that week. And, oh, whoops. Oh, okay. Actually, I did this one wrong. Let me fix this. This would actually not want to be the date, but you can do linear scale. It's because we're doing percentages. So we'll do 0 to 10. Okay, that one doesn't work as much. But yeah, so 0 to 10. So 10 being 100%, 1 being, or actually write 0. So you can actually write their weekly attendance. So not present, and then present 100%. Okay. So when you look at this, it will be, now we've got the percentage here, and then notes about attendance that you can fill in, how much work was completed for the week, and then You can put in, for each one of your students, you put in their IEP goals, and you can monitor how far along they are on meeting that, any sort of notes, math goal, notes about math goal, possibly a social emotional learning goal, notes about that. And so this will allow you to then, once again, have one of these spreadsheets where you can actually calculate how the student is doing. Because you have the date here, it will actually, you can actually go through and create graphs to say how often the student is there and any sort of progress that they're making. And so Google Forms is kind of a nice way to organize all of that. And then, if your goal is to check on their IEP goals once a week, then, or have your instructional aide do that, then, excuse me, that is a way that you can also keep it organized. So in the module, I want you to actually put together the progress monitoring tool for your students with an IEP, and for each one of your students with an IEP on your caseload. So you can do that even before school starts by getting a list of your students, getting their IEPs, and then creating one of these. And so I just want to see that you have that created, and then and what it will look like. So because you may not have your students yet. All right, next, just a reminder, because it's important. This is actually a link to a website, San Diego. Whoops, that one wasn't the website for San Diego, but I will get that. But anyway, these are the timelines for special education. So 15 days, you have 15 days to come up with an assessment plan after a student has been referred to special education. There's some caveats if it was at the end of the school year. So then the parents have 15 days to consider and sign the assessment plan. Then as far as IEP notification goes, they give it very vague language. It's early enough to ensure the opportunity to attend. So this is that you're going to have a meeting. Usually districts like about 2 weeks notice if there's going to be a meeting. You have 60 days to assess and develop the IEP. And so that's from the day that the parent has actually signed and dated the assessment plan. As far as implementing, so now you've held the IEP meeting, then you need to implement that as soon as possible. If you get a student who's just come to your school, then you have 30 days to make sure to have an IEP, and then also making sure that the parent receives a copy of the student's records within 5 days, and that the students are reassessed every 3 years, fully reassessed every 3 years, but they should have an IEP meeting every year. Starting at age 16 is when the transition services have to happen. And then, yes, and then there's some things around due process and how long you have around that. And then, of course, 30 days for the initial IEP meeting. So just to make sure that you have a place with the timelines and everything, I've put that there. And then also from last term, we went through and we read the 90 tips in 120 minutes, and I have put that in your module as well so that you have it. But I just want to remind you again to include measurable goals to present levels of performance or identified challenges. So those are the SMART goals that we wrote last year. You should be writing SMART goals in your methodology courses and learning about them there. And then we'll also be doing that in the behavior and collaboration course this fall. You need to collect appropriate data to demonstrate the implementation of the IEP. If it says that they're supposed to have support in reading vocabulary development, then you actually do need to demonstrate that you have implemented a vocabulary development assistance and that you're monitoring their progress with that intervention. And then also remember, continuous progress monitoring is your way to demonstrate that you're actually doing scientific research, evidence-based instruction, and that you need to use a variety of assessments. You can't use one assessment to make any decisions about a student, and that you bring those assessments to a team, a multidisciplinary team, to make the data-based decisions. The multidisciplinary team can be the IEP team. It just depends on your school. So once again, here's the multi-tiered system of support, which goes around the academics and the behavioral instruction. You need to have the universal assessments and supports for all students. Then you need secondary interventions for some students, and just a few students need the tertiary interventions. And finally, this is what's next. So these are the 3 pieces that you will need to be turning in to complete this module. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out, and I wish you the best of luck.